You are on live, sir.
Very good, thank you. Let's call the Public Works and Utilities Committee for February 22nd, 2021 to order. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Diaz?
Yes, Councilor Garcia,
Present.
Councilor Lindell,
Here.
Councilor Vigil Coppler,
Here.
Chairman Rivera,
Here.
and Councilor Beta is running late.
Yeah, he'll join us as soon as he can. Thank you.
Okay.
Next is approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff, Ms. Wheeler?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Anything from the committee? Wishes of the committee?
Move to approve. Second.
Second.
Motion for approval of the agenda by Councilor Vigil Coppler, second by Councilor Lindell. Any further discussion? We have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Diaz.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Vigil Coppler,
Yes.
and Chairman Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz. Any approval of the consent agenda? Any changes from staff, Ms. Wheeler?
No changes from staff, Mr. Chair.
All right, anything the committee would like to pull off? All right, what are the wishes of the committee?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second. It.
Motion for approval of the consent agenda by Councilor Vigil Coppler, second by Councilor Garcia. Any further discussion? We have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Diaz.
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Vigil Coppler,
Yes.
and Chairman Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from February 8th, 2021. Any changes, Ms. Wheeler?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Anything from the committee? Wishes of the committee?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion for approval by Councilor Lindell, second by Councilor Vigil Coppler. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Diaz?
Councilor Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Vigil Coppler,
Yes.
and Chairman Rivera.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we're on item number 6A, public comment. Is there anyone that's responded to you, Ms. Diaz?
No, I have not received any public comment today.
All right, Mr. Beta, do we know if anybody's on to provide a public comment? Are you there, Mr. Beta? All right, I don't see anybody that I think might be here to provide a public comment. And I believe Councilor Beta has joined us as well. I saw him, now he disappeared.
I'm back, I think.
All right, there you are. All right, Ms. Diaz, if you can let the record show that Councilor Beta is with us now.
I will do so.
All right, so I don't if Joe Beta's on to see if there's anyone with public comment, but it doesn't appear so.
It would only be that phone number, Counselor, and I could try it one more time if you'd like.
I'll try it one more time just to be
Okay.
safe.
Let's try it.
Counselor and Mr. Abeta, this is Todd with Aon. That is Pam Jaramillo with Aon. And
Okay.
she said she can't get herself off mute even when you hook up the phone, so.
Okay. I think she has to unmute herself by pushing a button, and I do not have those directions on me, but I can look them up for her.
Star
Hey.
6, Joe.
Star X?
Star
I'm
6.
sorry.
I figured it out. This is Pam. Sorry about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Garcia.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. All right, we're on to no public comments. So we're on to presentation and informational items. A is a presentation, a benefits presentation by Ashley Burrell and Human Resources, and I believe Aon staff as well. Ashley, are you on?
Mr. Chairman, it's Bernadette. Ashley is not with us tonight, so I will introduce Aon, who will be giving us the regularly scheduled updates on our benefits and our plan and where we stand. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Todd Burley and Pam Jaramillo.
Thank you, Ms. Elder.
Good evening, everyone. This is Todd Burley with Aon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, fantastic. We are going to update the financial status of the health and dental plans with to include claims and premiums through January 31st of 2021. So in this, if we will focus on column A, again, this is data through the end of January. Enrollment is down about 3%. We'll skip down to row 7. So far, year to date, the city and the employee contributions have totaled a little less than 11.2 million. Again, that's unchanged from last year. There were no changes to premiums for this fiscal year. So far, year to date, in row 10, there have been about 10.7 million in medical and pharmacy claims. Row 11, no member has hit the $250,000 stop loss level. Row 13, fixed costs. These are the administrative costs that the city pays to Cigna, as well as stop loss premiums to protect the city against any members who exceed 250,000. Has been slightly over 1.1 million for total expenses of 11.8 million in row 16. Row 17, that's a shortfall of about $630,000 through the first 7 months of the year. Row 20, that's 5.6% above the premiums paid in row 7. Next slide shows the same information just on a monthly basis. Again, really nothing stands out so far this fiscal year, but if you look at rows 10 through 12 at the bottom in column H, you can see the impact of COVID as claims were significantly lower for that quarter than they were prior to that, or than they have been since. They ranged anywhere from 900,000 to 1.3 million. A typical month is closer to 1.7, 1.8 million. Next slide, please. Same information on a graphical basis. We'll skip through this one in the interest of time. This is really what drives the city's costs year over year, are the number and amount of high cost claimants. So far, year to date, there have been 7 claimants who've exceeded $125,000. That's half of your $250,000 stop loss level. But as you can see in the payments column, none have exceeded the $250,000 stop loss level. Last year, there were a total of 15 claimants who exceeded $125,000 for a total paid, not including stop loss reimbursements, of $4.1 million. At the very bottom, net paid, if you take the $4.1 million and subtract the $1.1 million, net paid last year was about $3 million. Next slide, we will get to dental. Dental continues to run well. What you'll see in July and August is all of the people who had cleanings scheduled in the second quarter of 2020 made up for that in, if you look in column D, at the very top in rows 1 and 2, you can see the claims for those months are significantly higher than a normal month. A normal month for the city runs in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. But again, that was this pent-up demand for dental services from members who could not receive services in Q2 calendar year of 2020. So I don't think there's any reason for concern. This plan typically runs, since we adjusted premiums a few years ago, it typically runs about $100,000 surplus year over year. And the last slide is just this information on a graphical basis, which I will skip. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Very well. Do you want me to take this, Bernadette? Or do you want to?
It doesn't matter. I can take it and we can wrap it up.
Okay.
So the last slide is a recap of the 2020 renewal, just for point of reference. So as you know, as part of the annual renewal process, we were forecasted to be about 1.9 million of an increase to 2019 costs. So we had a lot of discussions through committees and council through the budget process regarding the annual renewal process. And we talked about the challenges we were facing, to include the challenges of COVID, budget shortfalls, but also took into consideration financial constraints of our employees. And as a result, as you all may remember, the governing body voted to use the health and dental fund balance dollars to offset the renewal increase to both the city and the employees. So we didn't have any increases essentially to the rate premiums last year. This decision did not require the use of any other city funding for the 2020-2021 plan year. And of course, that did not include any increases to the biweekly rates for employees. We had a lot of discussions about the risk that we were taking, and everybody understood that this could begin to deplete the health and dental fund balance and would potentially require the city to use general fund dollars if we experience another year of high claims consistent with what we've seen in the last 2 years. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions from the committee for Todd or Ms. Salazar?
Mr. Chair?
Councilor Vihel Coppler, go ahead. And then Councilor Beta.
I just wanted to know, on the earlier charts, we refer to employee and then we refer to subscriber. Is that the same?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel Coppler, yes, it is. A subscriber is an employee, a member. It includes both employees and their dependents, their spouses and children.
So when you refer to subscriber, it just includes the employee?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Beta.
Thank you. This is either for Aon or for Ms. Salazar, but when I first got on the council, there was a concern with our plan and how generous it was, and especially when it came to, at the time, Obamacare and the potential for IRS fines because of the generosity of it. And then the Trump administration came in, they put a lot of holds or did away with a lot, or tried to do away, or executive orders having to deal with Obamacare. But now Biden's in office, and do we still, are we going to run that risk again of potentially having a generous healthcare plan, and then the IRS comes in and says, you know, you're going to be fined now because of how generous your plan is?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Beta, I'll take the first half, Todd, and maybe you can add some follow-up, but you're correct, Councilor Beta, in that there was what they called the Cadillac tax, and we did some work with Aon probably a couple years ago on what those penalties would look like for the city if those taxes were enacted. They did get postponed, and I have not attended any trainings or heard of anything about the implementation of bringing them back, but perhaps our folks from Aon have more information regarding how that might work if those items were to get reintroduced.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Abeyta, at this time, I have not heard anything about that so-called Cadillac tax, which is that excise tax being reinstated. That does not mean it couldn't, but under the Trump administration, it was repealed, and I've not heard any plans to bring it back.
Okay, and then my next question, Mr. Chair, is again, being the chair of the Finance Committee, this has always been something that's been a concern to the Finance Committee, and the term we'd like to use is kick the can down the road and deal with major plan changes or other changes later when the healthcare savings that we have set aside become depleted. So I guess at some point, we're going to probably have to have that discussion, and maybe it's at budget, as to how much is left in that reserve. And then once it's gone, what kind of changes we're going to have. So do you forecast or see us having to make major changes this year? Or can we kick the can down the road another year and next year, or have things changed when it comes to our health plan and to what it costs, and our costs going down like we were all hoping, and maybe we don't have to even have that discussion again? Can you give us an idea of where we're headed? Are we still headed down this path where eventually we're going to run out of savings and have to make major overhauls to our plan?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Abeyta, yes, if you look at the first couple of slides that Todd presented, we're forecasting that we're gonna run short again this year. We will be providing the numbers for the fund balances and the discussions about the renewal as we approach the budget process. But if we keep on this trend, we are likely to, be behind, and we'll need to consider some changes, or depending on what that fund balance looks like, what we do for one more year, but really taking into consideration future years and how we can sustain the benefits.
Okay, and is this something that the unions are aware of, and have you reached out to them? Have you been talking to them? Because I felt like last year, one of the what we got back from the unions was maybe we weren't doing a good job communicating with them, or they didn't know. And I certainly don't want to be in the position 6 months or even a year from now where we're looking at having to make major changes, if we are, and then the union saying, well, we were never aware of this, we weren't. So what's kind of been your strategy with making sure they're in the loop when it comes to this?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Abeyta, that's a really good question. And the big takeaway from last year was that we would conduct monthly meetings with all of our union presidents. So we've been having those since the last budget season to go over these numbers and to communicate where our plan is. So if they are unable to attend the meetings, which is often the case for some unions, they are still provided the presentation on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vihel-Coppler, your hand's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was related to Councilor Abeyta's. So now I just, budget hearings are coming up. And so I wanted to know if you have, what percentage, or what are you looking at? You might probably know something by now.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, are you talking about percentage premium rate increase?
Right, or however you want to phrase it.
Well, if you look at the trending, there's a calculation, and Todd could probably explain that a little bit more. But if you were looking at covering what we have a shortfall in, and then trying to assist us in building back our fund balance to a point of that would be comfortable for everybody, like best case scenario, and again, depending on how the future months come in, I'm thinking it's probably looking, and again, we're going to have lots of discussion to determine what track we'll go on for the next fiscal year, taking into consideration COVID and the challenges of our employees and such. But, you know, based on what numbers we have here, I'm guessing it could be in the range of anywhere from 10 to 16% if we were going to try to build back up our fund balance and cover what the claims are looking like coming in based on the trends of the last couple of years.
Thank you. Now, is that 10 to 15% of the city's cost or a shared cost between city and employee?
So that's, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Vihil Coppler, increase to premiums is the total cost. And then of course, dependent on the collective bargaining agreements, it's usually a 76% that the city picks up, and then the remainder is the employees. So that's 10 to 16% of the total premium, and then you divide it between city and employee portions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Bernadette.
Any other questions from committee members? Ms. Salazar, can you remind me for how many years have we been covering shortfalls with fund balance?
Mr. Chair, I can take that one if you'd like. If you look at row 17 on this page, you can see there's been a shortfall since fiscal year 18. Prior to that, there were pretty healthy surpluses for the 3 prior fiscal years, I believe. But for the last 3 fiscal years plus the first 7 months of this fiscal year, there's been a shortfall.
Right, so is there some formula, way to figure out that, you know, at this rate, we can't continue to do what we've been doing, or is there room to handle more? I know that's a tough thing to try to predict,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, at some point, what needs to happen is we need to have the amounts in row 7 equal the amounts in row 16, which is basically that the revenues that are received both from the city's 76.5% share and the employees 23.5%. Basically, at some point, we need to get revenues equal to our expenses, or we're going to continue to have to dip into that health fund to cover the excess.
Right.
And that's essentially where that 10 to 15% number was. If you look at row 20, so far this year, there's a shortfall of 5.6%. My guess is that will be slightly higher by the end of the year. Healthcare costs in the last half of the year are typically higher from the city's perspective as people have met their deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums. So a higher percentage of each claim is paid by the city. And again, healthcare trends are still in the 6% range. So in its simplest form, we're taking the shortfall and adding a 6% trend to it to get to roughly 12%.
Right, so this is just some hypothetical numbers here, but if we did a small incremental change to try to bridge the gap a little bit, would we be better off doing something like that than trying to cover shortfalls again with fund balance and then getting next fiscal year into a much deeper hole than we're in potentially right now?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, all things unchanged, if claims continue to trend at 6% or so, which I mean, every forecast I've seen does not see medical claims trends diminishing over the next few years. So really each year that the city does not do anything just results in an additional 6% shortfall until it's just going to build on top of each other. And that 15% that Bernadette mentioned earlier, if you recall last year, it was about 9%. So really that things are kind of running as we expected. So really it's just the 9% shortfall last year plus a 6% medical trend for this year.
And Ms. Salazar, I know all the unions have a little different stake in their contracts mention or a little bit different with regards to insurance benefits. There has been communication, even if you haven't been able to meet on a consistent basis. Have you at least had communication with them, letting them know what it looks like?
Mr. Chairman, on some months they haven't been able to participate. So the communication that we've had with them is we give them the information and let them know that if they have any questions to give me a call and we can walk through the information that's provided to them. We've had some discussion with the fire union and most recently with AFSCME. So there has been that discussion.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, so this is going to be interesting during budget discussion. So thank you for the presentation and for the heads up. Any further questions for Ms. Salazar or for Todd or Pam? Don't see anything else. So thank you, Ms. Salazar. Thank you, Todd, Pam, for being with us here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. We're on to item B, which is the financial framework of enterprise funds within the Public Utilities Department. Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I guess this is a good segue considering the conversation we just had. There are a couple times of the year where things like revenues and cash balances and where expenditures are kind of become the center focal point of conversations. One is during budget development and budget hearings. For utilities, it's also as we begin to transition to update the 5-year financial plan. So I felt it appropriate. I wanted to get some information before the Public Works, Public Utilities Committee, just to get some information and start some dialogue, as both of those are coming up in the next few months. We will be going into budget discussions, and we are working to finalize the update of the financial plan, which will be presented. So in the memo that I included in the packet, I tried to state a couple of positions and kind of business functions of the utilities. I provided a table with what I'm considering as kind of basic information or fact sheets to try to, encompass some of the conversation and get to work to keep the committee as informed as possible. So I did provide that information. We've also asked Marcos Martinez from the City Attorney's Office to join in the meeting, very well informed on public utilities, especially our history and where we're going. And also Jason Mumm, who is the utilities financial consultant that does the updates for the financial plan, also very involved in our cost of service studies. And but Mr. Chair, just wanted to get some information before the committee, be available to answer any questions, and also having my team available to do so. And with that, we are available for to stand for questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Are there any questions? Hold on. Okay, Councilor Vihel-Coppler.
I could have more questions later, but I just wanted to ask about the GRT funds. Are those funds kept in the utilities funds like wastewater, environmental, and water?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, yes, they are. So as the city does collect GRT, those payments come from the state. There is a percentage of a point that goes to those two enterprise funds, and those GRTs are showed as revenues that do come into those two enterprise funds.
How closely are they tracked? Because, obviously we collect them from our ratepayers for the utilities that they use. Then they go to the state, and then we get this, the city gets a trickle down back. How closely are those funds managed so that we can assure they're going back into the enterprise fund to these utilities? Or are they siphoned off into the general fund operating budget?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Villa-Koppler, I think a couple of things. One, GRT that we collect, especially from the utilities, is tracked very closely. We actually provide reports to the finance department on a monthly basis for each month of GRT collected by utilities paid in. The portion that comes back to the city from the state and how that's broken out and allocated back to the funds, I want to say that is tracked more again as a revenue. So while maybe it not be tracked every month, it's definitely trued up through each audit and through our financial plan update where we monitor each of the revenue streams.
So that doesn't sound like me, well, I guess it doesn't assure me that we are getting our fair share back into the enterprise funds of the gross receipts that we charge ratepayers for utilities.
Councilor, maybe if I could, maybe I can refer that to Jason Mumm, who does the analysis. So really, he's the one that really scrubs that financial data to track and show the revenue coming in from the GRT. Mr. Mumm, are you available to take that question?
Yeah, I'm here. So, councilors, thank you for the question. I'm not sure I can give you a complete answer here tonight, but I think what I can give you is some assurance that the revenue from GRT that is allocated to both of those funds is accounted for each and every year in our financial update. I don't have the exact numbers sitting right here in front of me, but it's some millions of dollars. And you know, my understanding for the way that works is the GRT gets collected, it gets remitted, and then a percentage of that comes back to the utilities. So whether that percentage is exactly correct or what it's supposed to be, I'm not sure I would know, but I do know that it has been flowing through to the Environmental Services Division and Wastewater Division, and that it was changed and no longer part of the Water Division's revenues at this point.
And the reason I ask is because it's the ratepayers that pay the gross receipts tax. And if the funds, the utilities were getting the fair share back of the GRT, it's really ratepayer money, then we would better be able to analyze whether a rate increase was necessary or not. Because if the utilities is truly an enterprise fund, then they should be getting those monies back and accounted for back into those funds.
Councilor Villa-Koppler, and Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I did see that also Bradley Fluch is on the meeting. And I do think there is a little bit of difference, meaning that the GRT collected by utilities, the GRT does not all come back to utilities. They're collecting GRT as a gross receipts tax on a utility service. Mm-hmm. So that all gets turned over to the state. The portion of GRT that gets returned back to the city then is delineated through different ordinances and what percentage. I believe something's usually broke down like 1/16%, how those are allocated. And so the amount of GRT that the utilities collect is not equal to the amount of GRT that utilities gets back as a percent of the GRT. And I apologize, I couldn't explain that better. But again, if Bradley has something he would like to add, I would appreciate it.
Does that mean there's nothing, Brad?
But Shannon, this is Jason Munn speaking. That's exactly the way that I've understood it for the last 20 years, that there's a percentage of the total receipts that come back to utilities. The mechanism for that is through a series of ordinances. And I I honestly can't track every one of them, but the monies that are appropriated do come back right now to environmental services and wastewater, but not to the water division, because that ordinance was changed about 5 years ago.
Well, I guess I ask because, you know, if we're going to call it an enterprise fund, then it truly does have to be an enterprise fund. And at least if we are having some leakage, we should know where it is. And I think our ratepayers should know that the gross receipts tax they're paying may not be coming back into the fund and could result in rate increases, which may or may not be necessary. But until we know, you know, this accounting formula for sure, then we really don't know. And that's why I asked the question. But I sure would want to know from finance where those monies are going and how much are we getting back into utilities. And if we were getting, you know, the fair share back into these utilities, then we could further justify a rate increase or a decrease. You just never know. And so, you know, enterprise funds to me are a, as Al Gore puts it, a locked box where you get the monies, you pay in, you pay out, you get it back eventually in some form, you know, through gross receipts and others. And so I understand there could be some ordinances where those might be siphoned off. I would like to know what those are. And then we really have a true picture of, you know, the state of our finances in these, in the public utilities. So I guess I have more questions than I have answers, but hopefully we can get some research done and really know where we stand. I'd very much be interested in that. Thank you.
Marcus, sure. Marcus, are you able to expand on that? Or, I mean, you've been part of utilities for quite a while, so.
I don't have a whole lot to add to the discussion. I would say that the local option GRTs have specific dedications that allow some of them to be directed or must be directed in some instances to certain areas, to certain specific subject matter areas that the City Council has opted into when they passed the local option GRTs. And so some of the money that is imposed as a gross receipts tax will be imposed on some of our utility bills, but because the dedication is not specific to utilities, they will not go back to the utilities just as a matter of statute. So there are some that are, for example, for quality of life gross receipts taxes. There are others that are specific to water projects, for example. That one we have not opted into, and so it doesn't go back directly into the utility. And then to add to that, this wrinkle is that certain governmental services that are impose GRT have a lower rate and no local options attached to them. So there's a governmental GRT rate, in other words, that is at a lower level. Typical goods or services that you will purchase and pay local option, the relatively high GRT rate in the city of Santa Fe for some governmental services is lowered to 5%. So there are a lot of moving parts to the GRT question. And by statute, it may prevent all of the monies being returned to, for example, the utility.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I look back to the title of this agenda item, Financial Framework of the Enterprise Funds. So I believe that it would be an important part of this report that we know where our gross receipts tax is going, even if it's not coming back into utilities. So, you know, what ordinances have been passed to take some of the gross receipts to other programs that come from the ratepayers? That would be, I think, a very big, important part of the study of these enterprise funds, because I think it's a big part. Gross receipts is not chump change. And it's good to know where this money's going and how much is coming back into the utilities. So I definitely want to know that for future. And I don't know when this report would come before us again, but probably I'd want to know sooner than that, especially if it's another year. So I don't know who could be charged with providing that, but Mr. Chair, that is something I think this body should see eventually again. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that something you can work on, Mr. Jones? And I saw that you had your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilor Koppler. So I can definitely pull out the ordinances that show the declaration of GRT to these two enterprise funds. But I did call out in the tables for both water and wastewater, and we do track those GRT revenues coming in. Each one of those revenues include about $2.1 million of GRT that come into each of those. So we do track the GRT coming in, and I'll take the lead on getting the information of the percent or the portion of what 1% allocation is to each one, and I will get that back to the committee as soon as I can get that together.
And thank you, Mr. Jones. And perhaps, what ordinances are taking GRT out of these enterprise funds and taken elsewhere? So I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions from the committee? I'll ask a couple questions and then we'll go to non-committee members. Mr. Mumm, what's the, what do you say the health of the enterprise fund is in general? The health of the fund and then our current bond ratings.
Well, I consider the health of the three divisional funds to be excellent. Last year's financial update, we reported that there were no rate increases necessary for the next 5 years, that all three utilities were holding a very healthy amount of cash reserves, consistent with the advice of your financial advisor, who the financial advisor is actually not me, it's First Southwest Utilities. This is the group that helps you do your municipal bonds. And they advised on the level of reserves needed to maintain a credit rating, which for the water utility was AAA, the highest that you can get, and for the wastewater utility was AA, also quite high. I don't know that the Environmental Services Division has a bond rating, but very, very good status as of the completion of our study from last year. We're currently in the process of updating it for this year. And we have also and as part of that, we've factored in some of the impacts that we've seen from the COVID-19 crisis, and note that the revenue impact that utilities have experienced because of COVID-19 is, there is some, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be of a material impact to the financial health of any of the divisions. It looks like the revenue recovery will be in the 90 to 95% of normal range. So there has been a hit, but it has not been a catastrophic hit on the revenue. And we continue to work on that update. We hope to have it done here within the next month, maybe 2 months. But we hope to be back to council through the committee process at that time to give you the results of that update.
Thank you. And is it our cash balances that help to make our bond rating so good, and also no rate increases for the next 5 years?
They are important for that reason, yes, Councilor. The financial advisor, when about 5 or 6 years ago, when the ordinance was changed to remove the GRT allocation from the water division, we went through a process at that time with your financial advisor to re-examine the cash reserve requirements that we would need to maintain the AAA credit rating. And the advice at the time was to hold 365 days of operating expenses on hand. That's the level that we've kept it at still to this day. And we still have the AAA credit rating, partly as a result. It's not the only factor for bond ratings. There's a number of factors, but it's one of them for sure.
So if we decided to use cash balances for other things, potentially it would at some point affect our bond ratings, as well as maybe decrease a number of years before rate increases may be necessary.
Yes, Counselor, that's correct. The cash reserve is not just there to be an enhancement for the underwriting of your bonds and your credit rating. It's also there, I think, more importantly, to help fund the capital improvement projects that the city needs to address on an annual basis. Every year, when we do our financial updates, we're looking at the capital improvements plan at that time. And the major task for us is to make sure that we have enough resources to fund all of those projects. And when we say that we don't need any rate increases, we also have noted that we also don't need any new bond proceeds at that time, which means that all of the capital projects that we've seen in the last few years of our updates are things that the city could fund potentially with cash on hand. So it does not incur any borrowing expenses. It does not incur any new debt service as a result. So if those cash reserves were removed, some of the impacts would be that there would not be the same kind of funding support for the capital improvements projects. And if you assume that the capital improvements projects need to be completed as scheduled, then the natural result would be, in the short run, that the utilities may have to borrow more money in order to fund those projects, incur more debt service and borrowing costs. And in some cases, that would lead to some pressure on the rates and charges for your residents.
All right, thank you. And Shannon, can you try to make a prediction on future big ticket items for, I guess, both water and wastewater at the moment, the next couple of years?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I did try to identify those also in the table, the ones that are in my foresight. We know that there's needed repairs that we're already underway doing for the reservoirs for the water division. Definitely the water division has the largest CIP. They do a lot of work into their assets. For environmental services, I did also identify, of course, their vehicle replacements, they do run all the roads for all the pickups of recycling and trash. So their truck replacements occur more frequently, and those are high priced trucks. And we're also working to help them with a maintenance shop where the repair maintenance of those equipment is being done. So those are a couple of ticket items for environmental services. For wastewater, we are still under, we're just finalizing the digester project, which is with bond proceeds. And they've begun construction on the aeration upgrade. We're almost halfway through that project. Both of those were large ticket items. The aeration upgrade was a little over 12 million. I'm still calling out about 10 million for the remainder of the project. And the renewal process for the NPDES permit is coming underway. And with that, I am expecting a more enhanced treatment for nutrient removal. And I'm earmarking that at about $30 million. We're working with our consultant along with EPA's engineering consultant to really pin that down. So they'll be doing a life cycle analysis. We'll be partnering with EPA over the next year to really take a hard look at what those treatments are, what would be the cost, and how that's funded. So we're working hard on that. And again, for the water division, I apologize, I was just scrolling down. So that table I did do a little bit different. So the 5-year CIP for the water division right now is about $87 million that they're anticipating projects that have to be done over the next 5 years. Right, these are from booster stations to the dam improvements, improvements at the water plant. But what Jason alluded to is also having the resources available. It's important to have the 5-year CIP, right? And knowing what are the things that have to be done and how you work through those. But I also have to be very conscientious that if I bring forth a $20 million CIP, that I have to have the ability and the resources available to complete them within that year. So right now, our average burn rate for our CIP is anywhere from $10 to $12 million. Is about our capacity to spend the funds. Some of it has to be permitting, construction process. When you're working in the canyon, right? Weather, fire restrictions, endangered species, all these things tie into a project. And so I try to be very conscientious of that. I would say if I brought forth, well, I know the financial consultant looks at the $87 million CIP. I would tell you that would immediately trigger a rate increase. And so I do try to be very conscientious of what the burn rate is and making sure that we have the resources available when the project is due. So we work very close on that and continuing to look at their CIP. So those are a couple of things that we look at in a couple of projects that are upcoming, and yeah, very substantial amount of money. I didn't want to blaze over wastewater with the 30 million, but I would like to thank the council for your support. Right, over the past 5 years, you've listened to me multiple times about the upgrades that we have done at the facility. Right, the digester project was almost an $18 million upgrade to that facility. And again, the aeration that's under construction now is about 12 million. So again, some major investments that are happening at that facility, and we do see some more coming on the horizon. Thank you.
Thanks. And are we planning for the return flow pipeline as well in that planning?
Right now, it does show up on the water division CIP. We're still working through the permitting phase and then the development, the design. At some point, I think there'll be a serious conversation about where that capital costs will land. This does kind of bridge across by some of the silos. So part of it is a water project and part of it is a wastewater project. Both have very good, I think, financial positions right now. And so taking that into consideration, it may be a split effort between the two departments. Water will definitely benefit from the water rights availability that's there. But wastewater will also play a role in that, I believe at this time, because of the permits that will follow for the operation. My gut feeling is that will still remain in wastewater. So I kind of think this project will even more marry those two divisions together. And we'll be looking at all those options when it comes to funding. But to answer your question right now, I believe that does reside in the water division's CIP.
Good, thank you. Councilor Beta, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jones, last week at SWAMA, myself, Councilor Vigil Koppler, and Councilor Garcia were presented with, it looks like gonna be potentially a large increase in tipping fees. Are you aware of that, and have you factored that into your financial planning for environmental services, or can we expect a discussion regarding a rate increase in the near future?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Beto, that is an excellent question. I am aware of that. We have been actually tracking this for a couple of years, working with Mr. Kippenbrock and the agency. We do know that the cost that they charge for service directly impacts the service that we do. Jason Mumm and his associates have actually are actually completing the cost of service study for environmental services, and a portion of that cost of service was dependent on the outcome of the rate structure for SWAMA. So now that they are kind of finalizing that process, I know Jason and his team are using that information to finalize the cost of service study for environmental services. I think it's a little bit early, but I'm fairly optimistic that this will cause a rate increase for environmental services. I just don't know to what magnitude at this point.
Okay, and do you have a timeline for that? Because the concern that not only I had, but other members of SWAMA had was, I think SWAMA was expecting us to act on that increase last week. We put it off at least right now for 30 days so that we could get a better understanding of what impact that's going to have to our rates. So do you need more than 30 days for us to have that kind of information? Should we talk to SWAMA about potentially another 60 days delaying it? Because again, I think I can't speak for the other members of SWAMA, but I would like to know what the impact is going to be before I vote for the tipping fees increasing at SWAMA. So do you have an idea of what kind of time frame we're looking at to where we could have answers? And Mr. Chairman, is this something that would come to this committee if we did have to raise fees?
Go ahead, Mr. Jones, and then I'll try to answer the second part.
So that analysis will be in the financial plan update. We're working now, again, Jason and his team to process. So if that's something that we can peel out and bring back before the committee, that we can do that. The amount of time, my belief would be is they would not go hand in hand, that there would be a delay. And so maybe Marcos could help a little bit with the committee to understand, but there's a process that goes through for the rate increase. And so one scenario would be, as we go through the cost of service study, develop what that structure looks like and the impact, looking at the magnitude of when that cash is needed for the rate increase. So environmental services does have a cash reserve, right? So that helps with rate stabilization so that as it gives them a chance to kind of buffer the reactions. So it's not an immediate rate increase. But I know it is subject to developing an ordinance, public hearings, an effective date, right? Given enough notice. And it's been my maybe limited experience, but the rate increases I've been involved with, I think typically have occurred on like January 1st. So I think if the numbers were to come in now, showing the rate increase, what is the percentage for how many years? How do I get that ordinance drafted up, gone through the public hearings and effective maybe by January 1st? Also depend on Jason Mumm to talk about the impact of that. The longer I wait for a rate increase, the bigger the impact of the increase has to be. So we definitely want to be proactive to keep that manageable. But that's just a little bit of insight from me. I know Jason Mumm is here if you wanted to add anything. He's definitely involved also with the agency's cost of service study. And if there's anything Marcos would like to add.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. This is Jason. I personally would request as much time, well, a little bit more time than 30 days, I should say. The reason being is we do know from other people on my team what the proposed increase is for the landfill. We are trying to factor that into our update for the Environmental Services Division for this year. But it's only one of several things that we're updating. And this year has been more challenging than in years past due to the changeover in the city's financial system that occurred last year. And so we're really working hard to try to map all of the line items and the details that make up our analysis. And we'd like to make sure that that's thorough and complete so that when we give it to you, we've had it vetted appropriately. I would personally like to have a little bit more time than just 30 days to get back to the landfill, but we'll work on the deadline that the city needs to have, and we'll do the best that we can. I think the plan that we had been working on just now was that we were going to provide a sort of interim impact analysis, and my consultant team is working on the cost of service for environmental services is working on that right now. And then we were going to come back to you with the more complete analysis once we have it done. So that might work as well. I think the impact analysis would be a little rougher, but it would probably give you what you need from a decision support perspective if we need to take action more quickly than say in the next 2 months. I'm very hopeful that we will be finished with our update, in April when we normally are ready to present it to you. But I am being confronted by my team pretty much daily on the difficulties that we're having trying to connect things after the financial system changeover. So it's a challenge for us, but we're getting there, and I do expect for us to be complete in April.
Thank you, Jason. Marcos, did you have anything to add?
Well, not a whole lot, Mr. Chair. I would say that you know as well as I how long it takes to pass an ordinance. I would at least give 2 months. But if we want to have a little bit more notice, I would maybe make a recommendation don't hold me to it, but we shoot more for the beginning of the new fiscal year or a new calendar year. So July 1 or January 1. In years past, with the last rate increases for water, they were done sequentially on January 1 so that everyone would know ahead of time what the rate increase would be. And they were all passed by ordinance, I think in 2009 for the next 4 or 5 years. So there were increases in 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And they all began on January 1. But we don't have to follow that strict timeline. I think it's more a matter of educating the public as to why a rate increase is necessary, how much it will entail, and then just scheduling the ordinance itself.
Thank you, Marcos. And Shannon, I'd like to see those rate increases as they're proposed to come before Public Works and I guess Finance as well, just so we're aware of what's happening before it actually happens.
And Mr. Chairman, Councilor Vihil Coppler is actually the chair of SWAMA now as of our last meeting. So, I would defer to the chair as far as timing and, SWAMA's role in this, but it is something that was presented to us. So I think it's something that, we're going to have to take a look at as a city as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Betas. Does that sound okay with you, Councilor Vihil Coppler? Thank you. Councilor Villarreal, you have your hand up. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just had a quick question, Mr. Chair, and to Chair Beta. Are we going to be looking at this in Finance, this particular item?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's my intent, is to have it presented to us.
Okay, so I actually may wait to ask my questions when it comes to Finance. I would ask staff if you could adjust the numbers when you're talking about certain amounts that each, whether it's revenue or costs. There's some numbers that say 0.1 million or 0.14 million, 0.8, 0.3 million. And I'm wondering if you could actually, since it's not even $250,000 or it's not $500,000, that maybe you could actually put it in another number that we could, that's, I guess, more clear. Because 0.143 million doesn't make sense to me. And I think it would just be help to break it down into the thousands, I guess. I don't know. Maybe there's another way. And then also if you could break down the amounts of potential CIP for the next 5 years for water. I think it just was a $50 million amount. And it would be helpful to have it broken down like you did for the other divisions. And so I'll wait to talk about it when we get to Finance. Thanks.
Councilor Beta, I just want to make sure I'm clear on the question, but I think Councilor Villarreal was asking if this entire presentation was going to be at Finance.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'll talk to both Shannon and Mary McCoy and coordinate so that the entire thing can be presented to Finance.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And especially because I have a question about the franchise fee, and I think Finance would be able to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee or non-committee members? Don't see any at the moment. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones, Mr. Mum. Marcos, thank you for joining us tonight and giving us a good presentation. Appreciate it. Item C is Public Works presentation of capital maintenance. Regina Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. We put together a bit of material for you tonight. I think most of it's in your packet, but I think I thought I might move through it rather quickly since you've had a chance to take a look at it, and then I'll be happy to have your questions. This presentation is a response to Chairman Rivera's request that we make a presentation about our deferred maintenance needs. And let's see, I'm having a little trouble finding my document. Let's see why it's not showing up. Let's see, I'm just gonna do it like this. Share, stop share. Share screen. I don't know why it's not coming up. It's so weird. And then it's right there. Oh, we'll just use this. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So Public Works is responsible for capital planning across the city, all departments except the utilities. So we actually did a little bit of fast footwork in updating some of our materials in the past couple of weeks so that we could bring you this today. We'll talk a little bit about our planning process, capital maintenance planning process, and funding sources. We've got an update on some projects that we've been working on, projects that are underway, projects that are completed, and projects that need to be funded, yet to be funded. Wanted to give you an update on the 2018 GRT bond and how we're doing spending that. That's an important measure of our ability to deploy the capital to create improvements in the community, as well as it's a regulatory requirement of the money itself. And then we'll talk about rail yard deferred maintenance needs and our pavement rehabilitation deferred maintenance needs. Councilor Lindell, your hand is up. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to, it wasn't direct to this, Ms. Wheeler. I just wanted to say I wasn't able to open the mill and inlay recommendation.
Is anybody else able to? Let's see, I could email it to here.
I keep getting an answer that says in a red bar, a valid value for options document ID is required. So I was never able to take a look at that, but I didn't want to interrupt thank you, Regina, but I didn't want to interrupt your presentation. We can talk about that after this part of the presentation.
Coming your way an email, and if there's anyone I missed, please forward it to them. Okay, it's coming your way. All righty, so, okay, there we go. And then, so the capital planning and funding, it's a little complicated. First thing to say is that we're still catching up on deferred maintenance. Of course, the big recession hit, and there was years where the city was just doing its best to stay afloat. And so we're still catching up on some deferred maintenance, and you'll see that in the lists, and you can see it around town. We leverage all kinds of different capital to fund our needs in the, all kinds of different money to fund our capital needs. So we use, of course, legislative appropriations. We're using a GRT bond that we got at the end of 2018 and got funded in January 2019. There are GRT increments, such as the GRT increment for the rail yard. There are impact fees that we're working with as well. They can be used on roads and parks. We have municipal financing, which we're doing with the solar and the street lighting project. DOT funds us for road projects. FAA funds us for airport projects. FTA funds us for transit projects. We have the ability to do a GO bond. And I'm sure that's not an exhaustive list, but those are sort of are really commonly used ones, actually. And finance will be presenting more on all the different types of funding. They're generating presentations for the governing body. And as I said, we're using most of these. As we do our capital planning, of course, we engage departments across the city, especially recreation, where they have high maintenance needs on those facilities, the libraries, you'll see. We talk to fire, we talk to everybody so that we can get their projects on the list. And we keep a master list all the time, and then we sort of update that annually. And so that's what just happened, was the annual update. So this list you're going to see is preliminary. Once we identify funding, say we decide we're going to go for a GRT bond pretty soon, and we'll really comb it down, dig into it a little bit, and then bring it to governing body. We're happy to have your input now, and then there'll be other times in the process for your input. So one of the things, there is some deferred maintenance that's being handled out of facilities using some of their operating funds, and it's a fire system inspections and repair. We had been behind on fire inspections on our own buildings. So you can see that there's quite a bit of repair going on and quite a number of facilities inspected. And so they're doing inspection, repair, and inspection, repair. And this is a great program that the facilities team is leading, that gets our buildings back into compliance with all our fire safety code. And then completed projects. You know, I wanted to take a moment to share with you. So we have a number of public works staff here to answer questions. And so Karen Gross is here from facilities. She actually created this beautiful presentation. We've never actually had anything quite like this to show you. And so I just really wanted to recognize her for her great work. And she, of course, partnered with Michael Rodriguez, who's the facilities director. We also have Sam Burnett here in the meeting so that he can talk a little bit about the rail yard capital needs when we get there. And Mark Brooks is sitting here with me in my office so that he can talk about the paving rehabilitation. But it's really nice to see that we got some things done and to have some pictures of them. And so you can see a lot of work on Fort Marcy, a ton of work on Genevieve Chavez. The library's got some attention. See, we also had the oops, that was 2, pardon me. Oh, no, that was 3, huh? The Sal P project, which has got that facility looking brand new and great. Siringo got some work, Siler, you know, roofs, HVAC, offices, you know, pavers and sidewalks. This was all from, a lot of this was from the GRT bond. Some of it's from legislative appropriation. The Meg Cafeteria Edition, that was senior money actually. So that's a little bit of a separate money from the state that Gino's really excellent at getting. The urban bridges. This was a donation actually to Max and Friends Dog Park, right? So we deployed those improvements. Municipal court glass, I think that was a legislative appropriation. Some COVID modifications all over the city. We've got brand new nice air filters. That was CARES grant money funded. And some water company electric places. So we've done about $10 million of work in the last 2 years. So let's see, and these are projects that are underway right now and funded. So you can see there's a lot going on. This is another legislatively funded project at the municipal court. Sorry, that's a little small. I can make it a little bigger maybe. There we go. GCCC is getting some work on the roof. BC Pool, of course, we're jumping into BC Pool for that fix. Working really hard to get it open on time. It needs some major work. It's leaking, among other things. The fire alarm system, we talked a little bit about that. You recognize some of these. This Fort Marcy roof and clear story replacement. The governing body just funded that through a reappropriation from the 2018 GRT bond, if you remember. That'll be happening later this year. Sewer line replacements, Swan Park, you recognize this. This is the Swan. So right now we have full funding for Swan Park Phase 2 design, but it looks like we've just leveraged funding for Swan Park Phase 2 construction. And we did that by getting some impact fees. And I actually didn't follow up and find out exactly where this $500,000 is from. Soccer Valley is nicely funded. As you guys have seen this before, this is city, county, and state funding. New downtown restrooms, that's underway. We expect to break ground on that in the next few months. This is not exactly deferred maintenance, but it's almost deferred maintenance because you need restrooms downtown so badly. Southside Transit Center, Silo Road. So those are some projects that are underway. This is not an exhaustive list, but gives you a sense of some of the things that we're deploying capital on right now and addressing needs. So we'll talk about this in a minute, but I wanted to give you so all of those things are underway and have been completed. A lot of them utilized the GRT bond. And so I wanted to give you an update on how we're doing at deploying that bond. And this is a little bit of a technical, I didn't get a chance to make it a simple presentation. But what you can see here is, so you recognize this is the GRT bond and all the different things that the governing body allocated the bond to originally. These are the original allocations. And then these are the original budgets over here. And these are the amounts that we've spent. And so the GRT bond, we really got that funded in early 2019. And it takes about 6 months to get your contracts and POs in place. So we didn't get to spend much in that fiscal year that ended in June 2019. But with all the contracts in place, we really made some hay in 2019, 2020, where we spent $8.7 million of it and deployed that capital. Then this year has been a little slow again for obvious reasons. We've been deploying the CARES capital. So it's, some of the legislative money, all the different colors of money. So we've only at this point fiscal year to date only spent $2 million of it this fiscal year. And then there's the reallocation that the governing body just approved, and this was a really excellent move because it allowed us to put money into capital that can be deployed really quickly. So capital needs a bunch of equipment, like the signals are getting new cabinets and upgrading the equipment on our traffic signals. We'll be using some of this money for the bicentennial pool, the PNM lights. That street light conversion is being paid out of this. So of the reallocation, 507,000 of it's been spent, and that was only reallocated in September. So they're moving fast on that, and I think you'll see it move quickly. But then there's also what's been encumbered. That's what we looked at, is what's actually spent, and so that leaves us a total of $10 million left on the bond, not spent. And then we looked at what we've encumbered, which is another $1 million. So you've got about $9 million left to spend. I expect we'll probably by the end of this fiscal year have spent at least half of this. And the moral to the whole story is that we have to have spent 85% of this bond by 3 years from the time we got the bond, which was like December 2018. And so we are on track to meet that requirement of the GRT bond. And then we'll go back to the presentation about needs. Chairman, did you want to stop there and see if there were any questions? Because it's kind of a complicated piece, or should we just keep going?
Sure, we can stop there and see if there are any questions from the committee. Councilor Vihel-Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered, do we have that chart, the list that you just finished? We don't have that? Are we going to get it?
Sure. I need to put it in a little bit more presentation. It's sort of in a raw output form, and so I'll get some of the unnecessary columns out there for you and share that.
Oh, okay, thank you. And then there's not a lot here about the airport. And I know that at least one legislator during our legislative Zoom meeting was not happy about the airport funds not being spent. Are you going to have an update on that?
No, this presentation, Chairman, Councilor Vihel-Coppler, is about maintenance needs, and that's a new sort of capital project. That's a little bit different than the deferred maintenance, although I guess you could call it that. So we didn't do those big projects, and we did provide an update at the legislative breakfast and showed the design, and I think I can get you, if there's any specific information you'd like, I'd be happy to get it.
No, and I just noted though that, there is a little bit at the very beginning here. You talk about repairs, buildings inspected, and I think the airport's on that. And then, I don't know, I thought I saw it under repairs, but, oh yeah, it is there. I guess we only spent $247, but, I know this is more about maintenance, but I just don't want to forget that. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Don't see any other hands up. So why don't you go ahead and continue, Ms. Wheeler?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And then we have, these are the unfunded needs. So this is a result of our list and our experience. We speak with our maintenance team, we speak with our partner departments. And so this is very preliminary, as I said, but some key things, and some are more complicated than others. So City Hall, as you guys have experienced, and people who are in there more know it even more, is in really terrible condition. The HVAC is very non-functional. And the windows are non-functional, and the council chambers are non-functional. And so to get that building up to speed function for us is a significant investment. And this is a rough estimate. We haven't gotten a full price on everything. And so it's using our best expertise to estimate that. And I think a number like that begs the question, we might want to have a discussion. Do we put that money into a building at Midtown and temporarily house there, where maybe in the long run, those investments, those improvements might leverage lease revenue in the future? Or, are there other options we should consider? But we also put here, of course, a $500,000 study to really begin with the consolidation analysis about, let's pare down these 100 buildings that we're trying to keep in operating condition. And we've got people spread all over the place, and it costs us a lot of money in capital maintenance, reduces our efficiency from a work perspective, people running around. So thought we should invest in a study for consolidation. But, I was kind of adding up the years, and I think if we were to, build a new one-stop shop building, it would take us at least 7 years from the time we start, 6 maybe. So we'll need some place to call home for a bit. So that's kind of a complicated one. Community center, of course, Monica Royal needs a roof. The train depot, this is a big deal. Train depot is falling down. It's been held up by Jax now for over a year. Sam Burnett's actually managing this project. We have a full design, so this is a real construction number for remodel and rehabilitation. And if you have questions on that, we can ask Sam to give him more information. But it's a really important, iconic building in the middle of Santa Fe, and we're regulatorily required to fix it. We are guilty of demolition by negligence right now, because it is a historical building. A number of things for the libraries. The libraries where it needs some love, especially the main library right now. Director Tucker has told us that without some of these repairs, the library will close, and she struggles with these things on a regular basis. So we really need to really take care of our downtown library and get that fixed up and in operating condition. Of course, Siler Road is always needing roofs and heaters. Here's a great one. This is actually kind of deferred maintenance. So the fleet shop still uses oil out of, 1 gallon, 1 quart plastic containers. They need a bulk fluid system that would make them much more efficient. And then we have the problem of the fueling station at Siler needs to be removed and remediated. And that's probably just a low guesstimate of what's needed there. We would certainly leverage some state funds to help us with that problem. But that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. And we've been talking about it now for a couple of years. More roofs and HVAC, it's endless. And then the fire stations need some work. Fire Station 1 has been trying to get stucco and paint on that building for as long as I've been here, and a number of other improvements for the fire stations. And then there's the rec buildings and parks, not to be forgotten. GCC, you know, with that, so I should have said that we actually, with the portfolio of buildings that we have, we can expect that we need to invest at least $5 million a year in maintenance to keep our buildings running. We're catching up a little bit, so the numbers are bigger right now. And so it's not like they're being poorly maintained. This is what maintaining a complicated facility looks like. So we put $4.5 million already into GCC. We're still probably has about $1 million underway, and then be seeking like another 1.4 for the next couple of years. So that's showing that that building is really getting into good, solid condition. And the parks, that's an important topic right now. The parks definitely have quite a bit of deferred maintenance. These are a number of projects that we feel are high priority and will really improve the community's ability to recreate. Some of these, I think Dawson Park actually has been funded recently by impact fees and will be underway actually and done before we do any more funding. So this is actually underway. You can see Soccer Valley and golf course. Some of that's underway. Pickleball courts, the new pickleball complex has got to have that. Tennis courts resurfacing, really important. So with all of that, that's a grand total of 19 million for the facilities, deferred maintenance. And that's not everything, but it's a pretty good snapshot of things that have to be handled. And then there's the rail yard. So the rail yard, if you might remember about, gosh, what was it? It was a year and a half ago. It seems like not that long ago, but the governing body allocated $850,000 of the rail yard GRT funds that were fund balance toward capital projects that were high priority. That money was reallocated to balance the FY21 budget when COVID hit. So the projects that were on that list, of them, only these got to be continue to go underway. Sam found other money for these. Sam is managing the rail yard now with Bob Siqueiros' departure, as well as he's a property maintenance manager for Midtown. And so he was able to keep these projects going. The playground equipment, which is a regulatory requirement for our easement agreement, our conservation easement. This wooden park bench, same thing. They're all splintery and they need to be replaced. So he's got those going on. He's also working on some rail yard entrance designs, but these are the projects that really need to be funded right here. As we know, the landscape irrigation at the rail yard park is broken and needs to be fixed. And it also has a water harvesting system, which is really complex, and it drains into places that are undesirable, and it doesn't provide water where it's needed. So we need to work on that. The rail yard plaza and the Manhattan Street pedestrian crossing. So as of now, we don't have pedestrian crossings of the railroad tracks here in the rail yard, and we have bought some of the concrete slabs, but need to get those installed. So some of that project was done, but it didn't get completed. Electrical improvements for the farmers market, the shade structure and the water tower really need to be maintained, or we'll lose the quality of those facilities. And Flagman Way two-way traffic. So, you know, the Baca rail yard has become a really vibrant, great place, but there's only one way in and one way out. And the 10 people that live there and work there are super frustrated. And so we wanted to turn Flagman into an official two-way. So that's kind of the facilities, the rail yard. And then I wanted to show you the famous Mark Brooks road rehabilitation plan. Let's see, I think I'll let Mark walk you through this if I could. Do you mind? That's just right. Oh, did I share it? Are you seeing the road rehabilitation plan on your screen, Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Okay, great. There it is. You can use your finger to move it if you want.
Okay, so what we've done is we put together a list of roads in each one of the districts that we feel are in pretty desperate need of rehabilitation within the next year to 2 years, and we've pretty much split it up over the we've gone to each one of the districts, and the reason for these is just because these roads are to the point where they have shattering, and crack sealing and prolonging them in that manner is almost to the point where it's not cost effective. And so our maintenance is going up on these due to potholing and everything else. And that's why we put together this list. It's a fairly extensive list. You can see each district, we've tried to get the most of the major roads and the high traffic areas in each one of them, and it totals about $11 million total. So, these are roads that we feel that need to be addressed within the next year to 2. Yes. Otherwise, they get to the point of disrepair, and then we're looking at having to completely pulverize them and rebuild them from scratch.
All right, thank you. And then one more thing on that. So the last fabulous few years, we've had a whole bunch of road rehabilitation going on that Mark has led, and squeezed every value out of the penny of our gas tax bond. However, now with the revenues declining on gas tax revenue, the bond will be paid off more slowly than we expected, and there won't be a gas tax bond for a while to fund more road rehabilitation. So we're going to need to seek other funding for this work. And I think that concludes my presentation, Chairman, and we're available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Excellent presentation. And who put it together? Karen?
Karen did the blue one, Sam did the Midtown part, and Mark Brooks gave us the road rehabilitation.
Great job to your whole team. Thank you for that. Any questions for Ms. Wheeler or the team? Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and echoes. Thank you for the thorough presentation. If possible, can I get a copy of the list of the road rehabilitation? It was quickly went through, and I didn't see it part of the packet. The question I have that's been burning on, at least a lot of constituents in District 2's mind is, when is Salvador Perez going to open? Do we have an estimated timeline for that property?
Chairman, Councilor Garcia, not opening Salvador Perez is not about the facility being ready to open. It's about operational constraints, I believe.
So can you clarify what that means for the public?
It's not my department, so I don't exactly know what the details are, but it's not, the facility's ready to go.
Okay, so the appropriate direct question would be for maybe Ms. McDonald. And I'm happy to reach out to her. I know she's not part of this presentation. I've been getting a lot of questions, and a lot of feedback I've been getting from constituents is that it was operational facilities impacting the opening. And now that I'm hearing it's not, if it's staffing, then I'm wondering, I'll reach out to her because
Chairman, it's not, Melissa McDonald is our acting director of parks, and recreation is in a different department. Actually, it's in the community safety department. And so it's Gino Rinaldi.
Right. Okay. I'll reach out to Gino. Thank you for the clarification. And with this reorg, things get mixed up. But thank you for. That's all I have. I just I appreciate the information as we start to thoroughly look at those roads. I mean, as I was quickly looking at it, that list, it said going from St. Francis to Don Diego, then you're going to have a gap that doesn't need to get done. Then Don Gaspar to Old Santa Fe Trail. So, simple things asking like, why are we not redoing all of Cordova from St. Francis to Old Santa Fe Trail?
Right, and the reason we kind of put it together like that is because, you know, Cordova is a long road, and we're looking at quite a cost. And so as we put these lists together so that we can pick and choose, we've kind of determined the worst areas of that roadway, and that's why I put them in that list. And that way I'm looking at the areas that would completely fail first. And that's why I put them in that manner.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the clarification. And since I've got you on the line, so to speak, you know, Regina can give testament to this. We're consistently hearing about the road degradation, in particular around the Capitol South area. And what are we doing to look at a study? How can we rehabilitate the roads in that area? I know it's a historic district. I know it's going to take more than just probably resurfacing, but is that on our radar, looking at improving the roads in the Capitol South neighborhood?
Yes, the South Capitol area is on our radar. I've taken a hard look at when I was paving on Paseo de Peralta. I had a lot of the residents come in, ask the favorite street to ask about was East Buena Vista. If you've driven it lately, it's in horrible shape. And I've put together a number on it, going in and completely removing the concrete and basically rebuild from scratch. And part of the reason for some of those is just the fact that it's about 2 years ago we had a trash truck fall into a sinkhole on East Santa Fe, and we had to reconstruct that area. And we're concerned about the same thing happening up there. So putting heavy equipment on there and milling off that asphalt on top and recapping it is really, I don't feel, an option. So we have put in our list some, you know, crack seal and looking into the South Capitol area. There's several roads that we need to do some bores, you know, to find out what we've got and what we can do to start rehabbing a lot of those roads, because like you said, they are in very poor shape.
Okay, awesome. I just want to make sure it's still on the radar and we're doing everything we can to begin the process of rehabilitating them. With that, no other questions. Just want to thank the presenters again for the thorough presentation.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. Councilor Viejo Coppler, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's a good update. I worry about where we're going to get all this maintenance money, but I don't know. Keep working at it, I guess. I just wanted to let you know that I would also like a copy of the list of roads, because I couldn't open it, as Councilor Lindell stated earlier, on PrimeGov. I did text Jesse to see if he could free it up, but it hasn't been done yet. So I don't know that I will get that this will get fixed on PrimeGov, but in the meantime, just in case, I'd also like a copy of the list.
I just sent it to you.
Okay. Thank you. That is all, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have just a few. Ms. Wheeler, can you talk about, so you have the train depot in both, I guess, city maintenance and also rail yard. Is it a rail yard facility or is it a city facility?
Chairman, if I could let Burnett take that.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I guess the answer technically is both. The city owns the depot, the train depot itself, but it is part of our master lease agreement with the Santa Fe Rail Yard Community Corporation, who then, for complicated reasons, leases it back to us. So we own it, but it's technically part of rail yard operations.
Thank you.
If I could add to that, Chairman, I think part of the thing was too that we we could fund it out of rail yard 16% GRT if there was enough, but there's not enough even for the dire needs. And that's kind of a big chunk one, and it's actually kind of high profile. And so we pulled it out and we think it needs to be addressed really separately.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. So between roads, I guess city-owned facilities and the rail yard, just a rough estimate, about 32.2 million in deferred maintenance, more or less.
Right. More or less.
Yeah, still a lot. And it's my understanding that we're not looking at a CIP GRT fund that'll go out this fiscal year. I think we have to wait a little while to spend down some money. Is that correct?
Chairman, I think I did review this presentation with finance before I presented it to you, and they're aware of the needs. And I think our finance team is definitely taking a look and thinking about, like I said, there's lots of funding sources and where is the most appropriate place to get the funding. But I think they're clear that there's a need, and I'm confident that they'll be bringing forth some recommendations.
Great. Yeah, we still have a lot of unfunded repairs that we've just been pushing down the road for a long time. So thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. Councilor Beta, I don't know if you want to see this on finance as well as the presentation that Mr. Jones made. They may be suited to go hand in hand, but I'll leave that up to you to contact Ms. Wheeler if you want it to go before your committee as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would suggest that we hear this and in finance, especially as it relates to the rail yard, because there's a GRT allocation that we haven't completely figured out how it will be distributed. And there are quite a few needs, as you can see, and I'd like to see and hear from finance staff about that particular allocation for this year and how it will be directed towards this deferred maintenance that we're talking about for the rail yard.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Wheeler, just one last one I just thought of. The Southside Transit Center, it's been a vacant building for quite some time, and we had planned on making that the permanent transit center for some time. So that building's just been sitting there, I think. Is it still, I mean, are we looking at the right amount, or are we gonna have to pour more into it the longer that it sits there?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. Actually, we've been making good progress on that building. It is definitely a project underway. We've replaced the roof. We've replaced some HVAC. Sam, are you involved in that project? Did you just lean forward to?
No, that is
okay.
not.
So it's actually moving, and I think we have the funds, and we actually just made some good progress too in the whole roundabout that's going to be in front of that, because another thing you don't see on here is sort of the bigger road projects that are funded out of DOT. We're not seeing the big gigantic new facilities that are funded out of the legislature. But so that project is actually moving, and we're not losing ground on on the condition of the facility.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions? Last chance. All right, thank you both. Mr. Jones, Ms. Wheeler, both your teams for being here to answer questions. Much appreciated. And it's good to know the situations that you're both in and the struggles that you both have, and just great information. So thank you both.
Thank you, Chairman, for your support.
We have no action or discussion items, no executive session. Any matters from staff? Ms. Wheeler? Ms. Wheeler, any matters from staff?
No, Thank you. Let's see if there is any matters. No, Chairman, I think the presentation was a good download.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
There's no matters from Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, you're a little difficult to understand.
I think he said no.
Okay.
I apologize. Nothing.
Yeah, we can understand you, Mr. Jones. Thank you. Any matters from the committee? Any, and again, anytime anybody from the committee wants a presentation on something, email me, let me know. I'll contact the appropriate staff and we'll see when the appropriate time and if we can get a presentation. So just feel free to email me if you have something burning that you would like to have presented or discussed. Matters from the chair, I have nothing. Our next meeting is Monday, March 8th. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye. Uh-huh.